At this point in time, I'd like to call the Recreation Advisory Committee Board meeting to order. Would everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
May we have roll call?
Yes. Mr. Sims?
Here.
Mr. Pashal?
Here.
Ms. Webster? Here. Ms. White? Here. Mr. Renzi?
Here.
Mr. Sunnycalb?
Here.
And Mr. McInnes is not here.
At this point in time, I don't have any announcements to address, but I'd like to go one by one to see if the board members have any announcements they'd like to make. If not, we can move on to the next section. Are there any announcements?
Nope.
Okay. With no announcements being needed, has everyone had an opportunity to review the minutes from the last meeting? And if everyone has, would you like to make any modification for correction, or need a motion to approve it if there's none?
Well, I make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. All in favor of?
Aye.
Aye. So the minutes stand as they are without any corrections. And our next item is number 7, unfinished business. We have the scoreboard for Barber Street Complex baseball fields. So Mr. Benson, would you like to give us an update about that?
Yes, as you all know, this has been on the agenda for quite a while and trying to get the scoreboard issue resolved at Barber Street for the baseball complex. And in past meetings, we've had discussions that scoreboards on fields 1 and 2 had been replaced already. The one from field 1 was moved to field 4. And just to kind of finish this off a little bit, you all voted at the last meeting to purchase out of the Park Improvement Fund a new scoreboard for field 3, which was the scoreboard that was not functioning at that time. That scoreboard was delivered on Wednesday of last week. It was installed on Thursday. The scoreboard controller was turned over to Little League today. So currently, as of today, we have 4 working scoreboards at Barber Street Baseball. I will say field 4 scoreboard is the older one now. There will come a time in the next year or so where we do need to look to budget to replace that board. It's currently functioning great. There's no issues, but it is starting to reach its lifespan, as was shown with the other 3 that were purchased around the same time. But as of now, all 4 are working and we're functioning as planned at those 4 fields.
Woohoo. Thank you.
What was the cost on it? Do you know about?
The new scoreboard was $2,827.01.
That's a good memory. Wow. Thank you.
Are there any other questions from the board about that item? Okay, if there's no, our next item is the committee member discussion on adopted park progress and process. So I take it like has everyone here come to a point where they have adopted a park, or if you want to adopt a park, because I was not here at the last meeting, so I don't know which parks are still available. And if I know it's.
Yeah, so I can have a rundown of which parks were identified for each committee member, if you'd like for me to do that, Mr. Chair.
If you wouldn't mind.
Okay, so Ms. Webster has Barber Street Sports Complex and Hardy Park. Ms. White has Easy Street and the Garden Club Park. Mr. Pashal has Stormwater and Schumann Drive Complex. Mr. Sunnycalb, Riverview Park and the Dog Park. And Mr. Renzi has Friendship Park and George Park.
Okay, so at Schumann Drive Park, would that include Schumann Drive Park would include the basketball courts?
Basketball, tennis courts, and current pickle bar.
Okay. So,
Mr. Benton, did you have what the other ones that were still available to
So following
choose?
that meeting, when I'd sent out an email, I just didn't get a response back. And so I'm just asking right now for our chair if he could select 2 parks. You can either do it tonight or just in the next week, couple weeks or so, to select 2 of the remaining parks. I can get you a list of those parks if you'd like. And I'm not even opposed to having, you choose a park that's by someone else. Some of our larger parks can take 2 people with eyes on them, it's fine. But I kind of wanted to just get an update on everybody, how the process went for your first month, and then whether the board wanted to have the discussion now for your committee update, for your updates on your park. So if you want to do that during your committee updates at the end of the meeting, how you all would like to proceed with that going forward. So I know the direction as to whether leave this as unfinished business for each month or if we just start to include it in your committee member updates at the end of the meeting.
I would like to do it as committee.
Yeah, as a committee at the end of.
At the end of the meeting, right.
Yeah, so, it seemed like it worked pretty good in the past, so. Is everyone in favor, in agreement with giving your reports when it comes time on the agenda?
Could I ask, what exactly are we looking for? Like,
So-
in a report, like,
So some months you may have nothing, to be quite honest. I'm just looking for things that you notice, whether they're positive, negative, more so on the negative side. So you're a third set of eyes. I mean, we have the city, we have myself. I try to visit every park every single week, if not multiple times on some of our larger parks. And then I also have staff out there. But there's definitely things, at times that we're going to miss because a lot of times staff has their main priorities. They know what they're going out there to do. And they may miss some things here and there. So I think you all offer that set of eyes that goes out with a fresh approach. You're not going out there to cut the grass. You're not going out there to trim the trees. You're going out there to enjoy the park. And then also, if you have a chance to speak to park visitors or residents as you're around the city, they're also a set of eyes. So then that kind of just brings that whole input back to the committee and back to the city and just gives us a different approach a little bit. And like I said, there's things that you'll notice or the city or other residents notice that we may overlook at times.
did we discuss if I am keeping an eye on the skate park? Because I don't really have any idea what to look for there. I could ask somebody, but.
Yeah, so we have staff at the skate park that's there every single night. I pretty much get phone calls from them a couple times a week with certain things that are going on. So it's completely up to if a committee member wants to have that as part of their oversight, then that's fine. If not, like I said, I do have staff there and they're pretty keen on what's taking place. And I know after the last meeting, I did send out a report on what our revenues and those types of things that were going on at that park as well. So those are things that we can look at.
Do we get much feedback from the skate park, the person that's manning the desk there on, I don't know, some problems, concerns, good things going on, requests from the kids or whoever's using that?
Yeah, so just to be clear, we do get some things. As you can see by the revenue that I sent to you all after the last meeting, the usage of that park is very light. I try to ride by there as I'm leaving here a lot of evenings if I'm leaving here late, and it's not utilized that often. So the input they're providing is a lot of times what their opinions are or things that they see, and not so much what they're getting from the general public.
Okay, so you're saying for the most part that by the attendance being low, there's not too much input being brought back from the general public, more or less? So it's just most of the staff that's, or the individuals that's manning that point is probably giving a little insight.
That's correct. I would say, we do hear some complaints about some of the concrete and the work that was done in the prior project with some standing water and some things like that, some issues that have been brought up by participants. We're now charging a flat rate of $3 for entry into the park. So there has been some feedback from that. We had, whenever I first came on board, and just to be clear across, what I've changed as far as policies since I've came on board, when I came to the city, they were charging a $3 daily fee, or you could pay $1 per hour. But then there was no way to track what was being paid. There was no way of saying, well, that kid only paid for 1 hour. The attendants may know, but there was no way to track it. And from an auditing standpoint, it raised some questions from our auditors as soon as I got into my position. So I instituted a flat fee of $3 per day. That's what they're going to pay. There's no pay per hour, none of that. And now when they go in, they pay their $3 and they're issued a ticket. If I was to walk out there tonight, whoever's participating in the park should have a ticket on them. That ticket requires that staff has checked to ensure that they fill out a liability and waiver form. That's the staff's responsibility, and that they paid their $3 fee. So that's how we kind of, address the issue from the auditing standpoint. And, we'll see as we go through if that, affects our numbers financially. But as we saw with the report I sent to you all the past 2 years, our numbers have been pretty low from a standpoint of revenue generation.
Would it make sense to do like a monthly pass or something like that?
So we do currently offer 10 visits for $20, but they just have to come up front with the $20, and so we do offer that currently.
As staff has there been a heavy date on some weeks as opposed to the prior week or the upcoming week, or it seemed to be kind of flat across? I'm not saying flat. I ain't want to use the word flat, but it's like, is there a day of the week that is more heavily impacted than, I know Saturday probably may be a heavily impacted day.
Yeah, what I can do is I can get a report from that based off of our, when people are signing in. So I can get you all that for the last 2 to 3 months since we've started that process. I can get that, and then I'll forward it out to all the committee members so you're aware of what's happening at the park. I would say Saturdays and Sundays should be more utilized because we're open longer, as opposed to, during the week, we're only open, after 5 o'clock and until 9 o'clock, where Saturdays and Sundays, we're open more hours during the day.
And I apologize for getting off of the agenda, but it was brought up about the skate park.
So I'm curious if anybody has asked why there's not much usage. Is it just something that's not popular anymore?
When we changed from the wood ramps to the concrete, so prior to the change, there were several skate competitions and different things that were held there. And then when we switched it over, it wasn't quite the same as to the same structure for doing competitions. I'm not aware that we've had any rentals to hold a competition there since we switched over to concrete. And then that's why I was looking also to see what the usage was, to see that there's been a decline. So when we made those structural changes to the skate park, it just wasn't necessarily what some of the skaters were looking for. And the person that was behind, that was a community member who was, he does his own skateboarding and had sponsors and was bringing in and putting that all on his own without any input from the city. And it's really just died from that. It's gone away. We haven't had any competitions in there since we changed over the skate park.
That's a shame, because I think we thought we were improving it.
Said, but Greg just mentioned, it's interesting because I was just wondering, why would that be the case? Because I don't know if it's because of the actual size of it, whereas I know other areas have a larger size, but I know what we have to work with. It's great what we have to work with. So the only thing I would just say, for my not being there, it may be the size of it and the limited equipment that may be there. But again, from what we have to work with, I think it's perfect. But so idealistically, we would like to have a larger area, but right now, with the constraints, we're not able to.
Yeah, we didn't change the size. All we changed were the structures. Yes. So it's not saying like we decrease, we didn't increase or decrease it. We took the same footprint and put less obstacles in there, and we changed, we took out a half pipe, and we took, the things that we had in there, we didn't necessarily replace. And so that took out then some of the challenge from what we had before versus to what we replaced. Now, you can't please everybody all the time, but I stated before, I'm on the record of I wasn't really happy with the way that we changed that structure. It felt like it kind of came in differently than what we had originally decided it was going to be, and the proof is in that the utilization is down these years later, and the concrete wasn't quite what we invested in. And I'll stand by, at that time, wasn't really happy with the way that went in.
The only thing I was referring to was the size as far as the square footage wise size, not as far as the removal or the implement of the new equipment. 'Cause I know I've gone to several locations throughout the state, and not per se, I'm not a skater, I'm just saying, just so happen to be at certain parks, and I've seen that some of the areas are a lot larger in size than what we have here. So I was referring to the size as far as square footage of square feet, not the actual size of the equipment. Because I think what we have now is just, it's good for the area we have. But to give, are there any more questions about the skateboard? Okay. If not, to get back to what Mr. Benton asked of me, yes, I would love to, because I'm not an adamant fan of email a whole lot, so I don't look at email a whole lot, but I promise I'll do better going forward. But I would go back and I would look at the prior emails you sent. If I cannot find them, I would email or call you and just see what's available. I know, and it's great, don't mind, I'll stop in from time to time because I'm always at Shootman Park a lot, so I'll just, I'll talk to Mr. Benton, and Mr. Benton can relay back to you about some ideas I heard or received while out there, because I love interacting with the public when I'm out there. Because I know it's a good thing, because you never know what goes on to you at one of the parks, and even it's going to be good for me to get a new park because I've had Shootman for a while, so not like I want to give Shootman up, so I just wasn't here, so I'm comfortable with whatever decision that was made by me not being here. So it'll give me a chance to venture out to another park, to be able to see another park, and to be able to see what those residents within that area has to say while I'm out there. So I'll welcome any park. If it's 2 or 3, I would just let you know. If I cannot find the email, I would call you, let you know. If you can resend it to me, or if you give me a list of names at the time about the available parks.
Yes, sir. I can get you that information. And feel free at any time to call me. I know I send a lot of emails, but it's more for documentation purposes for my behalf.
Yes.
But feel free to call me on my office or cell phone at any time.
Yes. Are there any more questions relating to item B? If not, we're going to move on to item C, and that's the committee member discussion on park improvement for current fiscal year. So that's the committee. So I wasn't here at the last meeting at all. So did Mr. Benton, you address that, or was it the committee here?
Yeah, I can give a brief update as to where we currently are with that, and then you all can have a discussion if anyone has any input. Just to keep everyone informed, and I'll do it at each meeting, we've currently expended $2,827.01 of the $20,000 that was allocated for park improvements this year. Once again, that park improvements was for non-budgeted items that come up as we go throughout the year so that we can quickly address those items throughout the city with those funds. Just to be clear, that $2,827 was spent at a community park, so that was evenly spread amongst the $5,000 that's allocated for each zone. So please keep that in mind as we start to go through some of these improvements that are brought up, that if it's not allocated as a community park, then we will have to make sure we have those funds in that designated zone within the Rec Impact Fund fees. So with that, it's up to the committee. If anyone has anything to bring forward in tonight's meeting, then as a city, we can definitely look into that.
No, I'm okay.
Maybe we go with
Dante?
Adante. Any questions relating to item C?
Park improvement.
Well, are we going to discuss particular playgrounds we're looking at a later point of view?
We're going to say that towards the end of the meeting. Up on the
I'll save it till then. I have nothing to say now.
Okay, but would it relate to what the improvements that Mr. Benton has on the agenda?
No.
By the fiscal year?
No.
Okay, Joanne?
Last meeting, Sunny brought up about the handicap playground, and I think we need to put that back on the agenda. I'm not sure if you got any more information about that.
Yeah, if I can I'll just quickly mention
Okay.
It's under new business, playground discussion. We will be discussing that and some ideas that city staff has regarding that on item number 9. for
Okay.
tonight's meeting.
Okay.
Would it be okay, Joanne?
Yep. The other one was, I don't want to forget about the shade canopies for baseball, if that has to be put into the budget. It's old and it needs to be taken care of and addressed. I hate to see it get dropped on the way again. So that was one. And also the park signs, I know that you guys were working on getting a picture and having it made up. Have we gone any further on that?
I'll have an update on that as we get to staff matters.
Okay, I'll put that down. I think that those were the only things I had.
Okay. Joanne Webster?
I don't have anything.
Okay, Greg?
The only thing I had, unless it comes up in 9, was then the chance to look at the basketball courts at Schuman and the possible ones at Barber, so I'm assuming it'll be in the next item. That's it.
Yes, it'll be under staff matters.
And I do not have anything at all, so with that being said, we can close this part of the meeting and open it for public input. And if anyone in the audience like to come up to the podium, please state your name and address and direct all questions towards the board members here.
Just wanted to get a follow-up on the pickleball courts. When they're going to start, or is all the funding there, or are you waiting to approve anything else? And time of completion, everybody's asking. And we're just so excited. We saw the dirt pile, and we are very excited. And also, are you going to redo the courts at Schuman? I know that was talked about a long time ago. Resurface the tennis courts at Schuman?
Yep. So Shirley, this was discussed at the last meeting before, it's also in the minutes. So yes, there's going to be resurfacing at Schuman for everything, and then we also ask at that meeting that there be some notification to the public when that's going to happen, because, so to impact us, let people know that at the time, how long that will take and when that will be, so that it's not surprise. We already put that out there and we have a commitment for that. And everything will be done at that time, and they'll also be resurfaced. As far as the new pickleball courts, they're going in at the airport location.
I know where, yeah.
Right.
I saw the pile of dirt.
Right. So Mr. Benton can speak to the timeline on that, but as far as it, what do we say, 6 months?
Yeah, I mean, I can provide an update. I had it under staff matters, but if you all would like me to give those 2 updates, I can right now.
If you don't mind.
So just to provide updates based on those comments, Schuman Tennis Courts Council did approve the contractor at the March 13th meeting, so we are moving forward with that. It will include installing pickleball lines back on courts 5 and 6, and all 6 courts will be resurfaced and poles will be painted. Contractor is ready to go on that, so I'm actually going to meet with the tennis club tomorrow morning over there to look at some color schemes and also to begin discussing a timeline. Once we have that timeline in place, we're going to post signage at the park to let the public know that the courts are going to be closed down. The initial notice will go out, and we will plan to shut them down for 2 full weeks, all 6 courts at the same time, for 2 weeks. That kind of gives us a little bit of room in case we do face some weather issues or anything comes up during that time frame. We don't anticipate the project lasting over 2 weeks. However, if we run into multiple days of rain where they're just not able to work on the courts, then it could potentially last more than 2 weeks. But right now, we think a worst-case scenario is 2 weeks. So we will put signage and everything up for that.
And I have a question on that. And I need to look closely at it too. The current netting and making sure that, as we take those things down based on the ratcheting system and if it's rusted or, working, I mean, once they're up and they're set, that's fine. But in the case of taking them down, whether we might actually need to replace or change out the hardware based on having to take down the nets. I'm not quite, that's kind of an open-ended question. We should probably look at the actual net mechanisms to make sure that they're functioning, to see if that's something else than that we're just going to have to go ahead and repair, because I'm not necessarily sure of just taking them down, they're going to be able to go right back up.
Yes, so what we will do once we begin the project, we will remove the nets first thing. At that time, we'll assess the ratcheting system and the cranks and ensure that everything is functioning, because worst case, if it's not functioning and we do need to do some repairs, it gives us 2 weeks to get the parts in and be able to get those items put back up. So we will assess those, we'll more than likely we'll assess them before the project, and then we'll also assess them again that day whenever we pull the nets down, and ensure that once the whole project's complete, we go back up with some nets that are in good shape or new ones if we need to replace any. Anything else on the tennis, and then I'll move on to the pickleball update quickly.
I don't have anything on the tennis, but since we're talking about the resurfacing of that area over there, so I was just trying to see, after looking at the minutes, I did not see anything about the resurfacing of the basketball courts. And I was there at the basketball courts because my daughter played basketball through the county. I just can't recall like the conditions of them right now, but was there a reason why the basketball courts, if they're going to resurface, I mean, I think that's almost 3 different areas of Schumann Park. No, 2 different areas. The tennis court are in 2 different areas there. So the basketball court's in the other area. So is there a reason why if the basketball courts need to be resurfaced, can we include that also? Or is it too late to try to include that? Because if you're resurfacing everything, then the lines can be replaced, everything, while we are there for that as well.
So just to clarify, the budget was $36,000 to resurface the tennis courts. The pricing from the contractor came in at $35,500. So it leaves us a little bit of room in case we face issues with the cranks and ratchet system and stuff like that to replace those. I will say, I walked the basketball courts. They're not, I mean, the tennis courts are in really bad shape. The basketball courts at this time, I don't feel as though need to be resurfaced. It is something that we're going to have to plan for in the near future. But if you would like for me to, and we can look at it under park improvements at the next meeting, I could get a cost to see what it would cost to add it to the tennis project. And while they're already there, we can look at that, and then I could bring it forward to the next meeting, and it, could potentially give us a little bit of time before they're going to do the project. And if not, then I can circulate it amongst the board via email, and at least receive some input back from the board via email or phone call if that's what you so choose.
Not to step on Greg's toes, I'm just saying, everything is about preventive maintenance, and we shouldn't wait till the time for it to be going bad before we do it, because if they're going to be out there now, and if they don't need to be repaired per se like the tennis courts, at least we can bring them down to a point where they can be like painted, because it'll be a lot less maintenance, I think, as far as painting and putting lines down also. If they're out there, I think if you don't mind, Mr. Benson, I think if we can see what the price would be, and again, I'm not trying to step on Greg's toes about anything, because I just think if they're out there doing that, preventive maintenance will help to preserve them for a long period of time to come. Especially if it's not going to be a major cost at all, period.
And then timeline pickleball, maybe?
So I'll give an update on pickleball now. Currently, the contractor has submitted for permits through the city. The city is still waiting to receive our St. John's clearance permit as well. So we are currently in like a little bit of a holding pattern. You'll see a little bit of work taking place there this week. The stakeout phase is taking place from surveying. And then also you'll more than likely see some silt fencing starting to go up from the contractor. As soon as they receive clearance from permitting from the city, they're ready to go. Well, our initial plan was to more than likely start to, clear some land next week. The permitting process has slowed us down just a little bit. Those are things that are completely out of our control. We can't give permits from the city until we have clearance from the water management district. And those are stormwater and some things like that. We're in a holding pattern waiting for those. And it's not on the water management district, just to make that clear. There are some things that have come up that need to be corrected in order for us to get that permitting in place. So we're going to work forward. Hopefully, we can get permitting pretty quickly. And then, like I said, next week or the week after we can start. Hopefully that's the timeline we're looking at with getting started with clearing land. And then from that point, it'll all be moving forward with getting everything constructed and installed. Construction should take about 4.5 months from beginning to end. And that'll include, hopefully, the restroom facility is in about 3 months and a few other things coming in there as well.
And then Shirley, the other thing that was, the question was about lighting. So lighting will be at a second phase or so. And then that was part of the concern of making sure that the courts were resurfaced at Schuman, that there is lighting so that in the between, you'll have the day usage of pickleball at the airport versus being able to still play night pickleball at Schuman, if that answers that question. Yeah, so you'll still have the opportunity to play night at Schuman until the lights end up getting installed at Aviation.
I have a question. Pickleball courts, Sebastian is coming in and a lot of money spent on it. Could we put something on Channel 25 about the pickleball court to let people know that it's going in and what's going on? Just an idea.
Once we get started with construction, we can start to provide updates. We've kind of been a little bit hesitant because we can say dates and then we don't live up to it, to be quite honest, because we're facing a few delays that were a little bit unanticipated. So once we start construction, we're more than happy to start to provide some updates, get some things on the website that'll just give people an update on the timeline and where we're at within the timeline. And I'll take some pictures and we'll provide pictures as well.
Yeah, okay.
So it'll be
I'm still
something-
getting people asking me, are we getting a pickleball court? A lot of people still don't know that it's going in.
It's coming, and it's going to be a great facility, and
it's going to be.
it's going to take a little bit more time.
Everybody's going to be proud of it. It's going to be awesome. That's all.
And then piggyback off of what Sonny just mentioned, because once the pickleball courts do become installed, then could there possibly be an ongoing, I guess a little, what they call this thing, a wire on the tunnel 25 or about a loop? Because I know, is that loop still there about the meetings for the different organizations or on the website about the different organizations when the meetings takes place, the times on the loop?
I can look into that if we want to, definitely we can include hours for pickleball and provide updates as well with that. Once we get the construction finalized, I'll be more than happy to include that.
Yes, because that would just help bring the awareness to the area. So we know a lot of interest is there now, so once it do become an actual location up and running, that'll be a viable source for.
I bet you we don't have to advertise that.
Yes, because we know it's going to be on the website, so, and the location. At this point in time, if there's no more input from the public, we're going to close that portion of the meeting and reconvene the RAC meeting, and we're going to go to number 9, new business. New business is going to be the playground discussion, and Mr. Benson, would you like to include?
Yes,
comments?
so at the last meeting, there was discussion amongst the board about the all-inclusive playground that had been proposed at Friendship Park. I've done some research on that project, and in discussions with city staff, I would like to kind of propose a little bit of a different way to go about this project for you all to discuss. I'm definitely open to feedback, and I just want to kind of throw this idea out there. Within the city, we've got playgrounds that are beginning to meet their life expectancy and need to be replaced over the course of the next few years. You'll see once it comes time to look at CIP projects, that's one of the items that I've included in CIP is to start to fund playground replacements and renovations throughout the city, because in the Treasure Coast Planning Report, it outlined we have some playgrounds that are facing a deficiency and have exceeded their life expectancy throughout that process. So, the idea that I would like to introduce to you all is that as these playgrounds are replaced or renovated, the city would add all-inclusive components to improve accessibility for our residents throughout the city, not to have one playground that's specifically for that. This idea would be to begin to put these components in every playground throughout the city through a phasing part. And then that would increase the accessibility for inclusive, and then also just every single resident throughout the city. It would increase the accessibility throughout all of our playgrounds. So that's kind of the idea that I've discussed with some of my staff and other staff throughout the city is, instead of taking and spending, I believe the proposed budget had been $120,000 on an all-inclusive playground here at Friendship Park. Instead of doing that, taking that $120,000, spreading it out, and then in future years adding more money to that as we go through our CIP projects for future years, 5 years out, and beginning to add these components to our existing playgrounds and playground renovations and replacements so that we increase the accessibility throughout the city.
Okay, let's start like with Sunny. See if Sunny can let's start with Sunny so we can give feedback on what Mr. Benton just said about item 9, because I'm pretty sure everyone here has something to talk about. So well, not with Sunny. Let's start down on the right side this time.
Okay. Okay, so Friendship Park is supposedly the park that I'm looking after, one of them. George Street is the other one. I'm out there the other day looking things over, just getting the gander of everything. I'm out in the ball field, and let me show you what almost hit me in the head. This thing fell from 30 feet high, 5 feet from me. Who is responsible for the maintenance on those lights? It's a danger. Are you responsible?
The city is responsible for the maintenance on those lights, and
This happens more than once, I'm told, that these fall off. It'll kill you if it hits you, like a flying saucer, because they go out.
and I will have staff assess those lights out there. I was not aware of that issue. We can assess those. We were on the playground discussion for the all-inclusive. And do you all want to have this discussion now, or do you want to have it under
We can wait
committee
towards,
members?
we can wait towards the agenda list is for us, the committee members to have their say at the end of the meeting, so we can but this particular part of the meeting is just to give a comment on item number 9,
think that's
as
pretty
what Mr. Benson just stated, not our committee members meeting. That's going to be our committee members matters, going to be item number 11. So we're still at number 9, addressing new business. So if there anything about new business, what Mr. Benton just brought forth?
The issue was handicap.
Yes,
Input on
handicap.
handicap-specific playgrounds and the timeline in which we want to do that.
Yes, not the other items on that.
Not falling debris.
No, not yet.
No,
Not yet.
that's later
Hold
on
on to
item
it.
number
All
11.
right, so we can hold that off
Do you have
again.
any comments about what he just mentioned? The new business, which is the handicap, or not handicap, it's the inclusive playgrounds? If not, we'll go to Joanne.
I think my question, so what I'm hearing you say is that instead of designating a park for handicap playground, looking at the other parks, so when it's time for doing updated replacement of the equipment, that we would then incorporate handicap in with part of that playground, so it's both for everybody.
That is correct. We would begin to include inclusive components at each neighborhood playground or the community park playgrounds as we go through that process of replacement or renovation of those parks.
So it would be also for special needs kids and regular.
Yes, ma'am.
And I've always felt that way. I had a problem with it being a separate playground. I think it should be with all the other kids, so that if you have a family with other kids, they can all go at one time. Or those parks already have restrooms, most of them, cement walkways. So I'm very in favor of that, is incorporating in that when we start changing the equipment over.
I also think that's fantastic. I think that kids being inclusive, it's not singling somebody out. I think it's perfect.
Yeah, that's good. Sonny?
Yeah, I like the idea of including playgrounds around other people rather than a playground just separate. I like that, like Joanne said, let's make it a family thing, not just a playground just for the handicap. Let's make them feel wanted and comfortable, and yeah, I like incorporating that. That's a good idea.
Hey, Greg?
Yep, I also agree, and at the time when we were soliciting for the master plan, that was also an issue of one of the things that came up of saying our parks are kind of out of date and out of standard to what the norm was. So within that, my question, Mr. Bent, would be if we could get some type of workup of which park would be up first, second, and third within the ranking of the timeline of which parks need equipment replaced. And then also in that, would we still consider or talk about still putting some type of equipment here at Friendship Park, which kind of, kicked off this whole discussion of we removed something, and so in doing that, is this still a park in this confines where we want to have play structures for children, because currently as it is with, we do have the Boys and Girls Club and they have their own stuff, but it is, when I first moved here, this was a great location behind City Hall of coming and playing, and you've got parents that, use the tennis courts and their kids could do other things. And having removed that, just to see if that would be a discussion of also then updating this park and putting something back, but in doing so, make it, just as we're saying, it's for everybody, that there's pieces or elements for everyone.
Yes, so the current existing playground that's in the back here at Friendship, once we start to evaluate that playground, that will definitely be included within this playground and park as well. That's something that will be included throughout the city in all of our parks and playgrounds. I already have a list started of where we're going to go over the future years and going through and looking at our current conditions of our playgrounds. So I will be more than happy to forward that list to you all following this meeting to give you an update of my thinking, and then you all can provide some updates if you feel we should move the timeline on certain parks to better accomplish this goal. I'm open for that as well.
And then my follow-up to that is then, not every park is equal too. So, say Barber Street, if you look at it structurally, let's say it has the worst damage. Like it's the one line item that needs to be replaced first just because it's unsafe or it's deteriorated. Yet that's one of our larger structures in the city of trying to then figure out if you did that versus doing two smaller ones down below that are maybe, A and B and C, and B and C are just as close to A. I think that's part of the consideration too of like what we can afford and what that's what I mean also by timeline as far as what over a period of time are we talking about trying to do this in a 2-year period, in a 3-year period, in a 1-year period?
It's going to have to be spread out over a decent number of years. It's not a 1, 2, or 3-year project. Right. I mean, we're already looking at our CIP projects for 5 years out, and we're going to exceed 5 years to get all these playgrounds done just because of the cost of playground equipment, the inclusive components and everything to that nature. So what I think we'll do is we'll identify the parks and the playgrounds. I've already began that process based on the recommendations from the Treasure Coast Planning Council. I began that, and then also I visited every playground within the city and started to take notes on which ones are in the worst shape. So we can start with that portion of the timeline. We can adjust it year to year. We just can't, once we allocate money for next year's playground, we're gonna have to stick to that playground because that's where the money is at. But then the following year and those years can be adjusted yearly. But I wanna get a CIP. I've submitted one that has a 5-year plan, and you'll see there is, some years there's less money because we're only doing one playground, and then there's years where we can use a little bit more money and get 2 playgrounds out of it. And then there's going to be some years where we use $100,000 or something to that nature when we go to look at redoing the creative playground at Barber Street. Those are going to be more expensive, and so there will be differing amounts of money allocated and requested year to year. It will not be exact same request, $60,000 every year for playgrounds. It's going to have to vary depending on the playgrounds that we identify.
And then the last follow-up to that is, just so that just to clarify, is like if we identify this park or playground set as deteriorated, we're talking about just replacing it with a new structure as opposed to if like people really like the pirate ship or doing the certain things, like if we're trying to just bring in new pieces and add to that, or it's better just we're taking this out and we're starting all over. I don't know how that works from before, because again, with like Barber being one of the newer pieces that we put in, whether those same things over time of like you can't even get the same replacement parts, or how does that factor in?
So that is one thing that we're starting to face in some of our parks is having to purchase replacement parts. You'll see at Easy Street, we've been missing one of the jumping portions for about 3 months now. We finally have located the part. It should be shipping out later this month, or I think the first week of April actually, to replace it. So those are things that are all going to kind of look into this with the age, the current conditions. Some of the newer parks, for instance, Riverview Park, Barber Street is a little bit newer. If you all identify that, hey, we need to add some all-inclusive components here, we can look to see what we can add without having to replace entire portions. it may come down to where we're not able to add those components and we have to wait until we can replace. So those are things that we can kind of factor in and weigh as we go through the process. I just can't give you a direct answer without speaking with the playground companies and exactly looking at what we have.
It was also from the light of if we're adding and making it handicap accessible. So again, if it's modular pieces where you're putting in one or two handicap pieces to an incorporated park that already has a theme versus just starting from scratch. It's kind of from, if we're being realistic, it's probably going to be more starting over.
A lot of projects, money's been appropriated for. The handicap area was torn down for the police building, and the handicap playground equipment was given away. So I think we need something soon for the handicap. And not everybody's handicapped, but there is handicapped people out there. The woman at the tennis court over here that talked to her, a lot of people use the handicap playground. So we've been years without a playground for the handicap. That's all.
I'm in agreement with everyone as far as it was mentioned as far as inclusion, because I think to have an inclusion park, because a lot of the classrooms now across the state and across the country also are having inclusion classrooms. So, but my only concern is that for the park standpoint is that when you put the equipment in the general population of a certain park, well, not in general, not when you put the equipment in, I really feel as if unless it's going to be, because the city has an idea that they're going to section that equipment off, or is it going to be opened up once you put it in the park? It's going to be open for everyone to probably kind of go, and we know that how kids do not stay off equipment just because equipment is designed for other entities. They're going to go and just do. Sometimes it may be broken, then it may have to have a short like a lifespan because of someone who it wasn't designed for is going to utilize it, and then it could become defaced from a standpoint of not spray painting, but from wear and tear because of the individuals that it wasn't designed for. So, I've had a chance, again, I do a lot of different things on the outside sector, so I go to a lot of parks throughout the state of Florida and sometimes outside of the state as well. And so what I've seen in the larger parks, they do have inclusion sections of those parks because the parks are larger. So they have a fenced-in area where they have a hard surface. They have the swings. They have the other type of things where wheelchairs can come on too. But I know if we're going to implement it into our current parks, if you remove something and then bring in an inclusion piece, I think it may cost a whole lot more from that standpoint because you got to construct a whole new area for the inclusion, because especially going to put a swing in there. Now, some parks won't be able to handle a swing, and then when it comes time for you putting it in one particular park, now when it comes time for that next park to have it, whatever it needs, that park may not be done until about 3 or 4 years, which is still within that 5-year plan, but something to me, I think we remove something from back here. And I know that, and sometimes, we know that expanse is going to last for a long period of time because we know it's going to be used for the inclusion of individuals. So there won't be no wear and tear with that. But again, like I said, I'm all for putting it into parks, but I just don't think the individuals, and then, cause I know you said a light thing fell, whatever down here. Now you go to a park where the general population is at, if it's not sectioned off, I think it may be problems right there because now you got a swing or something that's kind of, it's kind of because those swings, the inclusion swings I'm thinking of are pretty big swings. And you have two entities there, whereas who knows if someone not paying attention, someone could be putting their child into one of those swings and some happen all of a sudden that a child could be affected by it from that standpoint. And then like I said again, I'm just all in favor, like Sonny mentioned, if we remove something from here and we're not going to replace it or have no timetable to replace it, I think it's kind of like a moot point because, again, putting it into the parks is a great idea, but I think it may be a deterrent also because who knows, the equipment may not be used because they may not feel comfortable being in an area. But you don't know until you try something. I hate to see we try something and then it's not utilized fully.
There's a park up in Palm Bay, it's called the Space Coast Field of Dreams. I'm going to be going there shortly, and it's all-inclusive. So I think when you section them off, that takes away the inclusion. But, you know, if you say, well, the handicap area is here, you know, and you other kids come over here, that's taken away the inclusivity of it.
I'm just saying that I'm looking at when you have the equipment that's, I'm just talking about, like, say one particular park, say like if the first park is Barber Street Park Playground, say if something is taken, say if a piece of equipment become damaged there, now we bring in the inclusion piece. And will we have an area large enough where the individual who needs the inclusion equipment or the handicap equipment, do we have an area large enough to handle whatever piece is going to be brought in for that? And then when you bring it in there, now with that parent who has that child who is going to use that, how can they feel safe and that child feels safe without the area of the individuals? Like I said again, a frisbee may be thrown or a ball being thrown, something where now someone's going to be impacted by it because they want to be in a position of utilizing something, not to worry about anything like, or the equipment may be ajar, it's not being like properly maintained. Not from the city standpoint, from the citizen standpoint, but sometimes, you know, kids are always on things they're not supposed to be on. So I just look at, like, I mean, I'm all for inclusion, but I just look at if some of the parks I've gone to in other cities, counties, are huge parks, and they have an area within that park for the equipment, for the inclusion kids, or for the handicapped kids, and it works fine. But like now, are our parks large enough for the inclusion equipment? Because if the park's not large enough for the equipment, there's only going to be one piece. Now you got to construct a whole different area because I know it's some time and time has to be put into the fact of making that area solid, which you got to construct and maybe remove an area from another entity to bring in equipment.
But I don't think that they would do that if it wasn't at an adequate space.
Yes. So the equipment.
Things get planned out pretty well.
Yes.
I don't think it's going to be an issue.
Opinion.
Yeah, I get it. I understand.
Again, but my degree is for ESE, which is a part of inclusion. So I'm all for anything that's going to help to make something better. I'm just like just trying to look at it, trying to visualize it, because I know our city is. I mean, we have a beautiful city. I'm not going. I've been here for a long period of time. Just it's hard for me to see how something for the handicap can go into one of our small parks, unless. I mean, it's going to be hard for me to see it until I see it actually take place. So, and then the 5-year plan is going to it's going to be interesting to see, because I know the larger parks I've gone to, like Fort Lauderdale, like over there in Hillsborough County, do have sections within their parks for the inclusion, which it works fine. It looks real good. But it's going to be interesting for me to see. So, I mean, I'm all for it. Whatever the city can do as far as staff, I'm all for it. But just hope we don't forget the idea, which did say we're not going to forget the idea about Friendship Park as far as it. So, as long as we just keep Friendship Park on the.
Well, you put yourself, just think of yourself as being handicapped. What would you want?
Yes.
I mean,
yes.
If you're not handicapped, you have no idea what the needs are. But kind of think of yourself as being handicapped. What would you want? That's the way we should think.
Yes. I mean. It's hard to think, but but in the class, my mind goes back to the classrooms and different factors in the classroom. I mean, because right now the classrooms, which is totally different from this, but yet the same, is inclusion. Inclusion, because that's what everything's going towards now, having all kids in the classroom, make sure all the kids have the same type of entity for success.
But I think, Matt, you're worrying too much. I think when they get to that point, they're going to present, and then we get to look at what their presentation is for that type of playground, and I think it'll probably give us a better idea, because I'm thinking that equipment now that is out there is probably designed with all of that in it, and so it will be able to space, because I know when we tried picking playground equipment, remember how crazy that was, and it worked out pretty good. So I would say we'll let them present to us and show us what they can put together, because I know what you're saying, but I think we'll
probably get some good ideas on that, and then we can,
Only thing I was doing is not worrying, Joanne.
I
was
don't want
just
you to
like I was-
worry.
Like you guys had a chance to speak whatever you guys had on your mind. So the only thing I was just doing was just saying I'm in favor for everything that's being said here. I was just giving my opinion about it because again, when it all boils down to, like I said several times, I'm all in favor of what the city's going to do and what staff is going to do. But I just can't visualize it, seeing how the pieces are going to be brought in. So, but again, I'm not a professional from that standpoint. I'm just a professional from a standpoint of just seeing things from the outside. So I'm not going to worry about.
and I'm a visual person, so I have to
Yeah.
see too, so I'm going to count on him to bring that up.
To me, as far as right now, I appreciate that comment, Joanne, but I'm not worried about this because I mean, staff has to worry about that. That's what they get paid for. I'm just sitting here as a citizen and as a community member within the city of Sebastian, just voicing my opinion on this volunteer board. That's all.
I'm glad we're talking about the handicap park.
I
That
think
makes
it's
me
important.
feel good.
Yeah, because I think
We've
it's
kind of
important.
forgotten about the handicap park.
Yes. But it's no love. I mean, it's no. I still love everyone here, so I'm just so don't get upset about that now. We all are in agreement. Yes. When Joanne
I'll
said
agree on the
worry,
same
I mean,
thing.
It's more important things to worry about than. Well, I'm not saying that this is not important. Now, come on. This is very important because I mean, I again, my degree is in the ESC, so I know. So are there any more questions about that? And also, Mr. Benton, thank you for that enlightenment. I really appreciate it. Because again, I want to be on record as saying I'm not against the inclusion whatsoever. Are there any questions about the new business? Okay. With that being said, we're going to move on to staff matters. Item A, current projects update.
So I'll just, yeah, at each meeting, I'll give you all an update on some of the current projects that we're working on from a staff level. Two of them, I've already given updates per your request to update our citizen who attended public input. Those were Schumann Tennis Courts and Pickleball Project. So if you have any questions on those items, you can ask them once I get completed with this. Barber Street Athletic Fields, staff is continuing to work on improving the athletic field turf. Work began on the football fields today, and we will continue this long-term plan of improving the playing conditions and then implementing a maintenance program that will keep the fields at a higher level. That's my plan. That's one of the first things, tasks that I tackled when I joined the city is going out to Barber Street and looking at our athletic fields. And, you know, it's a long-term plan. It's nothing that's going to happen overnight. If you've been out there and looked at the fields, you know, as I explained to Little League, and I've said at a couple meetings, they had to get a little bit worse visually in order for us to bring them back up to where they want to be. But I think, you know, I've spoken with the Little League program on numerous occasions, and once again today, and they seem to be happy with how things are progressing at the baseball fields. And you'll see within CIP projects, we'll continue to address some of the needs within the baseball and football fields and multi-purpose fields as we go through that portion of the improvements. Riverview Park and park signage. Staff is working with GAI, our consultant, to develop the scope and proposed pricing for these two items. We have received their initial scope and pricing. We had another conference call with them at the end of last week. And included in this is Lisa Frazier, who is our Community Development Director. She's included from the portion that Riverview Park is coming out of the CRA. That portion, and that's including the tree canopy and looking at kind of a master plan within that park. That plan, we went back to the consultant and we changed it a little bit. We're looking at a tree maintenance canopy plan on how to preserve our existing canopy and a succession plan for the trees. But then within that, we're also wanting to include components to look at the electric, the sidewalk, the mobility, within that park, and our special events, how we do the setup within that to best preserve the park, preserve the trees, but also provide the best venue that we can for all the great special events that are hosted at Riverview Park for the city, from, you know, the Clam Bake Shrimp Festival, Pelican Wildlife Festival, all those great events that take place down there. We want to make sure that we're going to have a stakeholder meeting for that project. So once we get that date set up, I'll include, you know, invitations to you all to attend, and then we're going to invite the stakeholders that host events at our park will be invited there as well to give their input, and we'll have that one-time meeting take place for that part of that project. We're also doing park signage. That is something that is definitely needed throughout the city. There's no constant theme as you go around to our parks. There's no consistency. Some parks don't have signage. So what we're working with them is to get a branding, a theme, and then we're going to implement that in stages throughout our parks. As I mentioned with the playground, a CIP, 3, 4, 5 years out, as we continue to go through this process, the park signage is going to be similar to that. We currently have $100,000 budgeted this year. This is going to take up more than likely 20 to 30% of that portion, so then we'll still have 70% to spend on park signage this fiscal year, and then I'm requesting additional monies in the next 3 or 4 years to complete this project, and then we'll have to fund it in future years as we start to meet the life expectancy of some of our signs once we replace them and things like that. The idea for this kind of began at the working waterfront in the CRA district, so we're kind of creating the concept signage within the working waterfront, which if you're not familiar, that technically is a park portion of the city. So we are going to continue the signage portion throughout all of our parks and changing some of them. Easy Street's probably the number one on everybody's list with replacing that sign because of how it currently looks, and then also ensuring we have signage at every single public space within the city so that people know it's a public park. We're going to get, my hope is that we're going to improve the parks and get them up to the standards to where I want people to know that it's a City of Sebastian park and that the space that they're utilizing is by the city. So that's our plan for park signage. And I know, Joanne, you had some questions. Does that kind of answer where you were going? So we will continue to use the Pelican theme. So we'll continue to use the one that's out throughout the city. That will be kind of the basis of the design. Color scheme, more than likely, it's going to look, green or something in that nature, because green space, open space, parks is typically green. But we will have that discussion once we start to really get into this and in the park signage. Then I'll start to distribute, once we get the proposals and ideas from them amongst you all, so we can have that discussion. I'll present the signage, to you all before we ever finalize it. We are going before council for both of these items on April 24th. So park signage and Riverview Park discussion will go before council on April 24th. So that'll be, that'll be after our next meeting, but due to our timeline, we're not having a meeting this Wednesday, and then we needed to get prepared. We're going to do a presentation for the Riverview Park and the park signage to council on that day to kind of outline to them why we want to go down this path and why we want to go with this consultant, to lead us within the park signage and the Riverview Park plan. Schumann basketball goals, I know that was brought up at the last meeting. So I've priced replacement aluminum basketball goals that attach directly to the existing poles, and they're about $500 to $700 to replace those goals. And I was hoping to have some pricing from a fabricator just to replace the brackets on the back, because I did go down there and I've looked at them, and there are quite a few of those missing the brackets on the back side. So I requested a quote from a fabricator locally, and I just haven't received the pricing yet. So I apologize for not having that for tonight's meeting, but as soon as I get that, I will bring that forward. We're looking at 4 goals total at Schumann Park. And as I said, they're $500 to $700 a piece if we really think they have to be replaced, or if we can, go a little bit cheaper and try to bracing first on the backside to see if that helps stabilize them a little bit. We can go either way. Once we get that pricing, I can send out an email and you all can have that discussion either at the next meeting, or I can receive feedback based on your emails on how we want to move forward with that. Landscaping and pressure cleaning. Staff is working on trimming palm trees throughout the parks and beginning to improve our landscaping. City Hall was one of the first ones we've done here with the mulch and starting to clean up. Here we're starting to advance back to Friendship Park. We've done some tree trimming at Riverview Park. Hardy Park is one of the ones they're getting started on this week. And so you'll start to see that happening throughout the park. So as you go through them, and if you notice landscaping things that you want us to look at, definitely, contact me, send me an email, call me, either way, and we can start to address some of those landscaping issues. Pressure cleaning, the tank has been fixed. We did get to Easy Street on Thursday, Friday of last week, so that park has been taken care of. Next one to take care of is Riverview Park, to do the sidewalks there. And then some fencing, Barber Street around the football fields. We're going to pressure clean that fencing similar to what we did at Garden Club. So anything you're noticing that pressure cleaning, we'll start to develop a timeline to where we try to get to these parks on a recurring basis. It's going to be difficult as we start to go into the season where we're mowing grass every single day of the week. We only have, so many resources, but we'll fit the pressure cleaning and those items in as we're able to. So if you're noticing, I know the Ducks are going to do a number at Easy Street. That's going to be one where we have to kind of, stay on top of, and we will do that. But it's going to be along a timeline that we have to follow. And last update on a park project, in case you noticed, Stormwater Park secondary lot. If you ride by there, we have removed the fencing along that secondary lot there that started this past week. So staff is starting to clear out the parking lot area. We are replacing that fencing. We didn't just tear it down to leave it without fencing. That fencing is going to be replaced, and it will start to clean up that front portion, the parking lot area, so that people don't use it as a dumping ground and such. So we can clean that up, and it'll start to open up that area, and then it'll lead more into the natural walkways that we will eventually get down to pathways and get all those cleaned up. That's one of my priorities within staff, is to go through each one of our parks and our walking pathways to start to address overhanging limbs and stuff like that as we go through.
Is that Engler? What part are you talking about?
Stormwater Park.
Yeah, but what part of the fencing, what road?
So the main entrance, just a little bit further to the east, is the secondary parking lot. So it's maybe a block further down, you'll see a secondary lot.
Farther away from the bridge.
It's that way, going south?
Yes,
No, it's-
south.
Yeah.
Okay. I forgot what street. Is that George?
It's at the end of Easy Street.
Oh, really? South Easy?
It's in between two houses.
Oh, that's South Easy. South Easy, on the end of that street. Okay.
Sorry, I'm still working on all the streets around here, but
Are there any comments from the committee members about? I was stating, like, are there any comments from the board in reference to what Mr. Benson just stated? If there's no comments about that, now we can go to the committee members' matters.
Okay, so, Brian, I'm sorry I blew up at you before. I was a little upset, Italian and all that. But, so who is responsible for the maintenance of those lights?
it is the city's responsibility. And I'll just be clear, and I ask this of every committee member, when you send emails to city staff and say you've noticed dangerous concerns within the city,
I would never do that.
Explain a little bit further so that we can, start to address those issues before we wait until the meeting to bring them up. So I will just request that from anyone. If you notice things, just please let us know. Feel free to bring them up at the meeting, but let us know so we can address them immediately. But that is the city's responsibility. I will get, whether we have to, I think those lights, we're going to have to bring a contractor in and get up to those lights to assess the light conditions on those. I was not aware of the lens falling. So
Not more than one.
We'll get, I think we have to bring a contractor in to address that.
Okay. So that was my issue. The second thing on the Friendship Park is you're talking about resurfacing. Some of those courts over there need resurfacing too, behind us here at Friendship Park.
That is going to be requested in a CIP project for next fiscal year to resurface the Friendship clay courts.
Okay. And the third thing, that I spoke to some people that were playing tennis, and they said that the lighting that's on the tennis courts is not the proper lighting. It's too high. They can't see the ball at night. I don't know too much about that, but that's what they told me about the lighting. He said it's not the proper lighting for tennis courts. It should be lower. That it was just cut down ball field lighting that they put in. And George Street, nothing to report. Everything's fine on that park.
The Easy Street Park, the guys were out there pressure washing, and it really did make a difference. So thanks for doing that, and it looks a lot better. I went to Garden Park, and if you're doing landscaping, that park needs a lot of palm cutting. There's a lot of dead palms on the trees there. Is there a sprinkling system in that park?
I don't believe so, in irrigation.
Yes.
I don't believe so.
Because
within Garden
walking
Club.
through there, it just seemed like bottom parts of the palms were that rust color, and the benches that are in there are all rust color, and that made me think there were sprinklers, but I couldn't find any. It was just kind of strange. There is a sign I would like taken off. It says "No pets allowed," and I think it should be one where you can walk your dogs, and maybe we can put one of those poles with the bags in it, because, but there is a sign there, and if they could take that off at Garden Club on Barber Street. And I know there was a garden club. I don't know if they're around anymore. I went to some of their meetings some years ago, and it seemed like the group was kind of getting smaller and smaller than it was years ago. And a lot of those trees in there, they're older trees, and I don't know, they're looking kind of like they need some help, but they've got plaques on all these different trees and bushes that people have donated. Some of the plaques, there's no names on them, and they're just laying down. I think we need to clean up the signage in there, or I'm not sure how to do it. If to take the wooden signs that are made there and put a little strip of something else, it kind of looks to me like a cemetery. When you walk through there, have anybody of you walked through there?
Yeah, I agree with you.
It looks like a cemetery because you've got these in memory of, and they're all along the walkway. And I know why they did it, when they started out and they were planting trees, but it's just kind of, it's a very nice park, and I don't know if people use it a lot. I would hope they would. So to make it more friendly, take the no pet sign down, maybe put the dispenser up for bags. Look at some of those older trees. They might need to be trimmed down or something, but it is a very nice park. Easy Street Park, people like that park and they use it. It's a very used park. When I've talked to people, they're happy there. They enjoy it. So.
Number 2. I didn't have a chance to get to Hardy Park. That'll be this week. The baseball fields, they're thrilled with the work that's being done. And the scoreboards are fantastic. The Little League, they're really working hard to come back. They're really working hard. And the fields look good. I was at the candle lighting ceremony for Logan Spencer at the football field, and that was handled beautifully, and everything looked good. I was at Shrimp Fest for the entire weekend, checking in volunteers, and I have to say I was really impressed with the work that the city employees do, how hard they work all weekend, just cleaning everything up, and they're just really hard workers, and the police also. It was really impressive. I was really impressed with the whole way it's run. I mean, it's perfect. So I want to thank everybody for that, and thanks for your hard work with the ball fields. And I will definitely get to Hardy Park. And I won't be trying out the skate park.
Sunny?
Riverview Park. I'd like to thank you for getting the light put up for the playground. The kids are playing with more confidence, and the parents talking. They like the idea, and I think it's a big plus. Appreciate it. Also, the Pete Harris plaque, getting that glued back. Appreciate that. And the yacht club, getting the shrubs cut down. I think that's great, getting that done. Also on Riverview, are we going to replace the Pelican? That's people's asking about the Pelican on the fountain.
We've had discussions about that. Unfortunately, the last 2 times that it's been replaced, it's quickly gone missing. So we will have the discussion again. I'll have a discussion with some of our staff to see if there's a way we can get it installed.
The first time it got taken away. Epoxying the Pelican onto the fountain, because it was just sitting there. If it's epoxied, it's a little bit harder to take off with it. Also, the dog park. We have a walking trail there. Can we get a sign up of the distance around the trail? A lot of people walk it and jog it. We also have a sign at Easy Street, the distance. Could we have that on both sides? In case you're walking the other direction and don't see the sign?
Yes, we can get a distance, we can measure the distance and get a sign up at the dog park.
That's it. Thanks.
And Greg?
And I have nothing different than what we've already discussed for Schuman and for stormwater. Thank you.
And at this point, I don't have any parks at all, but at the next meeting, I will have parks to address and bring towards the city attention as far as what I saw or whom I spoken to. In line with that, I would just advise everyone, if you don't know where all the parks are at within the city at some point, to kind of like familiarize yourself with those parks, because who knows, you may have a different park next time if you decide to.
We have over 30 parks in this area.
Yeah, so I know
I'm still adding to them.
I don't know where all the parks are at, but by me having this new list of parks to look at, not new list of parks, but getting a new assigned park, I'm going to be interested in seeing where my park is going to be at going forward. And also, will the staff need any help for the Easter event coming up?
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I did forget to mention that during my staff matters, and I have my note here. But just a reminder, the Easter event is going to take place on April 20th, Saturday, April 20th, at Riverview Park in the Twin Piers location, which is our grass lot there right along the river. We're going to have multiple age groups all the way up to I believe it's 12 and under age group is the oldest group. We are going to go with pre-filled eggs this year. We're not stuffing them ourselves, and we're not going to be accepting eggs any longer. So we are going with pre-filled stuffed eggs for this event. We will have a little bit, some different things for the younger age groups. We're going to purchase, some little ducks and some different toys, since the younger age groups can't really have the candy that comes at a typical Easter egg hunt. We're going to also start at 9 o'clock with the hay rides and the bunny coming through visiting. Hunts begin at 10 a.m. And so then after that, we'll do the prizes for the prize eggs, and then that'll conclude the event. But all of you are invited to come. I know Joan White and Joan Webster have offered their assistance. I'll be sending out some information on that as well. If any other members would like to assist, I'll include that in my update as I go through this, and provide you all with an update next week with all of the specifics and everything with that.
And will that be advertised on 25?
Yes, we will advertise it on the website, Facebook, and I'll also add the TV channel as well. We did electronic flyers to the elementary schools within the school district. Great. That's how that's going out. And then we will do paper flyers to the preschools.
Last year, it was the Halloween costume that we had different ideas for, right?
For the prices?
I don't know. Remember when we were talking?
I know I was a part.
I think that was Halloween.
Yeah.
We didn't have any changes
for Easter. Last year when we worked, we kind of like took an area and helped supervise the kids, keeping them back and that type of thing. There's always something to do. It's pretty fun. Yeah. Well, let us know. I'll sign up.
For those committee members who have not had a chance to be a part of it, it's pretty fun.
Yeah, it is fun.
The Halloween volunteer session was great, and even last year with the volunteering for the different prize areas or the age groups was pretty nice as well. And I think I may be out of town that weekend. If I'm not out of town, if you need any help, I'll most definitely respond to the email about volunteering for that weekend. But if the next meeting day is April the 22nd. Is everyone okay with that? Mm-hmm. So if you're not able to attend, just email Mr. Benton about you not being able to be there. He'll record it from that standpoint, and we'll know how many it's going to be at that meeting for that day. And if no further information, we consider this meeting adjourned.
And thank you for all your help. You did a good job.
Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.